Hey, it's Jarren. I just wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about a big question that I've been asking myself for the past couple of months, which is, should I learn stenography? Now, of course, the last couple of videos you've seen on this channel, by the way, I'm in a different location. I moved to Los Angeles, so if you look at one of my older videos, I had one called New in Town and talked about moving a lot. Well, I did it again. Anyway, I can get into that some other time. To focus on the videos that I've made previously and, of course, the question that I've been asking myself, I sort of settled on a couple of things that I think, in conclusion, made me say no. I think it's really easy for things to look extremely appealing on the outside, and I think the reality is like any situation, maybe it's only like 80% true, or really 80% of what you expected when you get into it. That's kind of like any niche. Like if you, let's say you start sewing and you start knitting or something, when you start doing that, you think, oh, I'm just going to make a bunch of clothes really quickly, and it's going to be this incredibly fast process, or it's going to have all of these rewards that I just know are going to happen. And you don't really expect the friction because you don't know enough about the space to be able to identify the friction points. Okay, obviously that leads into stenography. I spent some time practicing and I started learning my way around it, and I actually ran into a couple of hurdles that I want to touch on, and I think they would be helpful and useful for anyone that is interested in learning stenography. I do think it is an incredible tool, and I want to just mention a couple of things that ended up making me decide not to commit a significant amount of time into it, and I'll just kind of touch on those things here. The first question was, do you have a lot of time to practice? For me, the answer was, if this was worth it to me, I would have a lot of time to practice. And I weighed that one very carefully. The next one that I did not realize would be so significant was, does portability matter to you? Now, to contextualize this, when I first started, I was working at home, so portability did not matter to me very much at all. Now, though, I'm working out of an office and I commute regularly, which means I only take my laptop with me. If I can't fit something in my backpack, I can't take it to work. So that instantly cut down the amount of time that I spend in front of a computer with the Steno board, essentially. I was unable to bring that with me all the time. And that I think really impacted the results for me. The next question was, do you need precision? Now, I did not expect this. Again, I didn't know of these things before I jumped into the space, but as I was releasing videos, people were asking a couple of questions, and there were some people commenting saying, hey, this is great, but I've used it before and found that it's not great if you're multitasking, or if you're switching, or if you're trying to do things that require random key presses that are not essentially complete words. And of course, there are ways around that, but they all seemed to be sort of hacked together solutions to get into this. And that was something that I ended up running into a lot. I use a bunch of fake words and little made up things all the time that don't always have a pattern. Like, I'm just typing confusing things that a computer doesn't necessarily know. And I would have to build manual key combinations for all of those things because I don't completely have the characters for it. The next one is, do you multitask and switch applications frequently most of the time? So is most of your work in front of a computer used to multitask and switch applications? And my answer for that is absolutely yes. And I think there is this version of me which really, really wants to just sit down and write a novel, but I think I am just not there at this point in time. Most of my work involves switching between a bunch of different applications that have a bunch of different purposes, and that kind of goes back to all of those different key presses and combinations. And then, of course, the other question, which is the main motivator, is, do you want to get information onto a computer faster? And of course, the answer is yes. Absolutely, I do. And I wish, really, that after looking at a lot of these questions, that my final conclusion, I tried to set up a flowchart. It just didn't work out, so I'm just kind of running through the questions. But I was really hoping that, in the end, my final conclusion could be, absolutely yes, I am going to be the type of person that learns Steno. Now, there were a couple of other things, and one was, in part, I noticed a couple of other professional stenographers who had not been using stenography as their main keyboard. And that was something that I picked up on really quickly. Once I got into the space, I realized the professionals are still using QWERTY for some reason, and that means it's probably unlikely that I'm going to be full-time on a stenography board. My conclusion is that stenography is an incredible tool to use for some very specific use cases. And if that fits with you, if you're a novelist and you're looking to just get as many words as accurately as possible onto a page, I think, honestly, stenography is a great decision. Although I've seen recently the Caracorder, which seems like an incredible tool. The Caracorder, I think, Mini or 2 or something like that. It's a normal QWERTY keyboard, and it also supports chording. Now, this to me seems like the best of both worlds in some ways. I can still use a keyboard setup that I'm completely familiar with. There's very little learning or relearning required. Also, I have all of the keys that I need to do a bunch of hotkeys and shortcuts on a computer without having to rebuild everything from scratch. I mean, if I'm being honest with myself, most of the key combinations I use have been built on decades and decades and decades of practice from other people, and all of that knowledge has come together to build the keyboard shortcuts I use today. So replacing that keyboard fundamentally reset a lot of those things and sort of required me and a bunch of other hobbyists to kind of pick up the slack there, and I just didn't see as much function immediately for me that I would have hoped. And then again, that Caracorder seems really, really cool. It's still a little too much for me to take everywhere with me. My entire life pretty much fits in this backpack, and I drive everywhere. I take it with me, and especially when I ride a motorcycle, I don't have a bunch of space to fit an entire keyboard. I would like to have the QWERTY keyboard on my Mac, on my MacBook Air, to support chording like the Caracorder. And I'd still like to get a Caracorder and practice and learn how to do that. I actually ended up getting a couple of my coworkers to buy Caracorders, and I'm really excited to test them out. For now, I think I'm probably going to stay with a QWERTY keyboard. So with all of that said, if you followed this channel to learn more about stenography, you might still learn more. I might talk about it in the future, but I do apologize because it does not seem like it's going to be something that I'm doing on a regular basis. With all of that said, I am still doing a lot of things in my own time, and if you follow me on Twitter or TikTok, then you might have seen some of it, but I have a nonprofit called Go Solve, and it is essentially a social network to solve world problems. It sounds ridiculous, and I assure you that it actually kind of makes sense. I am happy to talk more about that in the future, and you can always follow along to learn more about that and the other things that I'm doing. If you've made it to this point, I want to thank you for your time, and I hope you stick around for more.